a cheap soldering iron, or soldering, depending on what part of the country you're from. This is one I picked up, I don't know, about a year ago, and I've been pretty impressed with it as far as it does the small soldering jobs that I need. It is not particularly inexpensive, but I will call it definitely cheap, because this thing weighs absolutely nothing. It came with a small roll of solder, 60/40. It works good enough. It also came with some spare tips. As you can see there, this is the one I've used the most. And this is actually the one I like the most out of all of the ones that came with it. Currently I have on the chisel style, which is good for getting into tighter spots, but really doesn't transfer the heat quite as well as this one for bigger stuff. It gets reasonably hot, really for most things in the speed that I solder at. It's got to be on at least 5 or 6 to keep up. And if you have something that's really high mass, you just have to crank it all the way up. The switch, it's a really nice strong switch. So as you can see, it also came with a sponge that I haven't used because I prefer the brass. So I don't know if I already said, but this was about 40 bucks for this kit, which is pretty spendy. You could get a equally high quality or low quality, depending on your opinion, kit for probably a third the price shipped. So looks like that's not going to come out. I'll quick disassemble this so you can see what's inside. Prepare for disappointment, that's what I will say. So the things I've soldered with this are some custom speaker crossovers, some, I'd say, larger to medium-sized circuit board stuff, not surface mount by any means, the normal through-hole style. And now I'm getting these pads stuck to my fingers. For Phillips, that's all it is. And you can see just how cheap this thing was made. I mean, the threads on this are barely formed. I mean, this thing was stamped, not rolled. So remember, you don't always get what you pay for. Admittedly, I have not been soldering for all that long, maybe a year or two, so I'm not what you would call a pro, but I mean, soldering is really easy once you get the hang of it. There's nothing to it. Some people think you need the best solder and the best soldering iron, but in reality, if you're just doing cheap stuff for your own, you know, personal fun of it, you don't really need anything fancy. Let's see if I can get you in on what's in here. Nothing fancy. Got a potentiometer on the back side to control the temp. Looks like there's a fuse and a few other things. Now again, forgive me for not knowing every single bit of this circuitry. Plus, this thing is pretty much permanently fastened in here. I'd have to break it to get it out, and I am not in the mood to break it, so there you go. One moment, please, while I reassemble this. One note that I forgot. This strain relief is actually pretty good. It clamps down really hard between the casing and the bottom plate. So you can see there is this protrusion from that molding there, and then it just clamps this in sort of with a collet style strain relief. And again, that does a really good job at clamping down on that. The other thing I will mention is just what colors they used for each prong. So I will go to the return or neutral. Actually, first of all, let's check if this thing's grounded. Oh, it would help if I turn my multimeter on. All right, let's bring this in here. Let's see. That's a good sign. This thing being grounded means you won't, or at least shouldn't be getting any shocks or tingles off of the iron itself. All right, so let's go back to the neutral. This one I think is going to be the yellow-green, which goes in. Well, let's start with the hot here. Nothing. Ah, you know what? The switch wasn't on. You have to be smarter than the machine. Nothing. Okay, so the switch goes through the neutral, which is interesting. I would not have expected that. As far as mold making in here, you can still see milling marks. Yeah, there you go. You can see milling marks in here, which, I mean, it's on the inside of the mold. It doesn't really make too much difference. I didn't see any more indicatings on what this is, but it feels like ABS to me. I could probably burn it and tell you what it smells like, but I don't see much value in that. It's almost certainly ABS for how hard and cheap it feels. Everything is back together. Something else that should be seen here. So it's 1 amp, 110 volt, made in China. Not a whole lot of information to be taken there. The tip change out is standard. There's nothing particularly special about this soldering iron compared to other ones out there. Would I recommend this one? It's tough to say. As an iron itself, yes, it works. I'd say it works pretty well for small things. How long is it going to last? I can't say. As I said, I've only had it for about a year, and it hasn't shown any signs of slowing down, and the tips have lasted quite a long time. I've only, used a handful of them, and I should check on the availability of spare tips, because these ones in here that are left, I don't find to be that useful, especially the really pointy one. There's just not enough surface area to transfer any heat to the part. This one, definitely that's the winner right there. considering that it comes with a little bit of solder, and when I say a little bit, I mean, if you look at the outside diameter here, I've used maybe, you know, almost a full turn or a full width on this. There's maybe 3 wraps on this thing back and forth. Value added maybe 50 grams of 0.6 millimeter. You probably saw that. For 40 bucks, can I recommend it? I would say probably not, because there are better models out there for the same price, or you could get one that's going to work just as well and last just as long for less, shipped right to your door. That set aside, again, it does work. 40 bucks. I can't really complain, but I'm not gonna say it's amazing either, so take from that what you will.